Okay. So tenant search insights, and this all comes back to, we talk about, the reason, the promotion tonight, I believe, was 5 biggest common mistakes. So, and how it can cost you. So obviously, renting your property is absolutely critical. Having a tenant and receiving an income is the main goal. However, if we have situations where people request different ways of us promoting properties and things like that, but when you see some of these stats, you just know that you have to do things like advertise on realestate.com. It's just a given. 5.8 million unique visitors per month, so 18th most visited website in Australia. But what's really interesting is these numbers, like 92% of visitors include surrounding suburbs in their search. So often owners have an opinion that a tenant is going to just search for an area, but they don't. They will do a general sort of search for surrounding areas, and I'll come back to that one in a minute. 55% of tenants don't go past page 2. So at the moment, if you did a search in Greenslopes, I think you're looking about 6 pages of properties for rent. So if you've got to page 2, your chances are becoming really slim of people, prospective tenants, even looking at it. 26%, yeah, as you can see, it sort of goes down the line. Now, the reason that I've mentioned, I'll come back to the first one, 92% of visitors, including surrounding searches. One of the things that we have to do are upgrades to our advertisements on realestate.com so that you have a bigger advertisement. So those bigger advertisements, if your property was in Greenslopes or Coorparoo or Woolloongabba, Yeerongpilly, it will, if it's an upgraded advertisement, if anyone was even looking for a property in a surrounding suburb, your property will still show. They will still get to see that property when they do their search. So it's actually quite relevant, because if you're not an upgraded advertisement, it's not going to show. Okay, and then this is about what tenants are looking for. So we've been tracking this month. I think there's 85 applications give us this information. So the average age of tenants looking in our area is 30. Average income is 50,000. Average rent is 410. And average timing is 6 days. So that's telling us that actually tenants want to move in, within a week. So what you pick up from that is a couple of things, because I meet prospective owners daily, and a lot of people are out there looking for older people, to rent their property. I think the oldest out of the 87 applicants was 56. I think that was the oldest, and that was one. Yeah, so, and I guess if we did this in January, we'd have another age group again, because January, when your students are out looking, that 30 is probably going to be quite high. It's probably more likely early 20s. Income, well, that's what it is, average rent, but average timing. So when you're thinking about a promotion for a property, I often meet people who say, do we need to be advertising 8 weeks ahead? Imagine if you did that. So most of these people, out of 85 applications, want something, in around a week's time. So there again, your property can become stale. So it's just little tricks. It's little things that we do to make sure that we're getting the right people at the right time. If we've got active, genuine prospective tenants, a lot of them set up searches. So they get information as soon as something similar comes up. They set themselves up with alerts, they're referred to. So they'll get those alerts, and those first inquiries are always your best. So, yep.
So is the average income, is that net or is that gross?
Oh,
Net, would
It would be net.
it's net, I think, Peter, yeah.
So the rent is about 40% of what comes into the household?
Yes, that's right, yeah. But this is breaking it down singly. Okay, so if there were 3 applicants, we've broken it down individually, so each, the averages work from individual, not just one application.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah. You lost me, Pete. Yeah, so, just, no, talking about that time frame. So, like, we generally are working on around about listing a property in a 3-week period. Now, if we've got the price right, and we've got a good promotion, it should be let. I've pulled up some figures today. it's a bit of a push for Jeff Jones Real Estate. But Brisbane average, just so you know what's going on at the moment, house median rent Brisbane overall is $420 a week. Units has come in at $380. Average days on market, so not rented but on market, is 33. And then average vacant days is 20.8. Jeff Jones, individually, our average day on market is 22 and our average day rent is 12. So we're significantly lower than what the Brisbane average is. So, and I would suggest it's about some of the ways, some of the things that we put together with regards to the marketing of the property. I'll stay on that for a minute before we go to end of lease disputes. So you've got to, because of what's going on and how many properties there are available, you've really got to stand out. Your promotion has to look really good. I have an analogy that I used today in front of Sam. I talk about, I have adult children, which I'm sure a lot of you do, and I've been shown regularly of late online websites for dating. And you flick through and you find someone and you want to sort of stick on them. Well, I associate that to, I've been married 32 years, just the way this isn't me, this is my adult son, I trust you. But you want to look at something that's eye-catching. So it's no different to a property, is it? So when the days are gone where, you could have iPhone photos of property and you could get away with dark photos, and it's just not like that anymore. In fact, we're moving even into sort of styling, and we have promotions at the moment with properties that have virtual photography in them. So some rooms are set up, living rooms are set up with furniture in them. It's just virtual photos. It's a lot cheaper option than getting involved and taking furniture in and things like that. But it really works. Yeah. We see a lot more visits. We get a lot more inquiries. We took on a property a few months ago now in Coorparoo, and at the time we listed it, it was up against 87 other 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom units. And it had been vacant for 8 weeks at that time. So when we took it over, the difference was that we had the professional photos taken, we had 3 rooms with virtual photography, and we did do a price reduction of $10, and we let that property in 6 days. So, that 8 weeks, and there's a lot of people with, who can tell you those stories at the moment of those time frames. Like there's some long vacancies at the moment. So you really want to look good. Yeah, just grabbing attention, and obviously the aim is to get numbers, get the inquiries, get people through the door, and then you'll receive applications.
Can you put a figure on the impact of outside versus inside when people are looking at ads, or even when they go to look at a place?
Yeah, are you referring to sort of house, and you're referring to the?
Well, when you're looking at preparing for presentation a house, you're about to put it on the market.
Yeah. Look, I mean, presentation is everything, but it just may be that you don't, if it's not that great externally, there's nothing wrong with starting with internal photos.
Yeah, but you'd probably lose some who, if you don't get the impact on the outside, you won't get them inside.
Yeah, look, we've got one at the moment that we've just started a promotion that externally isn't great, but inside is lovely. So we've gone straight to the inside with the photos. So I might have to come back to you on that. But I think if you can get the inquiries and you can get talking to people, and if you can book them to get through a property, and you can talk, you can talk about those things that, look, you need to see inside, and they've seen some lovely photos inside. If they arrive at the property for their inspection and it doesn't look great, I would say that even though they've arrived, they'll come through it. So fingers crossed they'll,
Probably a bit like a job interview, isn't it? Or a CV. CV gets you the job interview, but
yes.
You go there and you've got nothing.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So, yeah. I mean, the first step is to create the interest, isn't it? And I guess that's what I'm referring to. So if we can get the interest, if we can get the people through the door, yeah. And then, just focusing on, like, I guess when we talk about that income and the age and things like that, I suppose it's probably varies from suburb to suburb. But we're most of south side of Brisbane, obviously, that 30-year-old tenant, well, you know, that we get a lot of tenants who have just finished their uni, get a lot of sharing situations. Look, and even students. I mean, yeah, we do get a lot of those in that early times of the year, but they're not necessarily a problem, you know. In fact, quite often we think the younger tenants are great because we can train them. You know, it's about our education. Our induction sign-up time with a tenancy agreement is roughly about 45 minutes. So there's a lot of work that goes in explaining what they're responsible for. So, okay, end of lease disputes. Getting it right from day one. I don't know if anyone has ever been through one of these situations. Yes, I do. Adrienne could write a book on it. But yeah, there's some pretty horrific stories that you can hear if things aren't managed correctly from day one. So we talk about cleaning. You know, I could tell you a case quite recently where an owner took on the cleaning themselves. So the recommendation is that you have your property professionally cleaned. You really want it looking sparkling. I mean, let's face it, for all of us, if we moved into a property, we wouldn't want to get there and have to start scrubbing, and you know, it just wouldn't feel fair, would it? It's a lot of work to move. So if a tenant does it, yeah, they're not going to like it. So, and when you're faced with situations like that, tenants will come back at you to try and, you know, get compensation. You know, if they're not happy at the beginning, we haven't started on the right foot. So having that property just spick and span is just so important. Then the entry condition reports. Making sure that it's really detailed. Now, there's nothing wrong with older properties, don't get me wrong. It's all relevant to the price, you know, the rent. It's, you know, if you've got something brand new that's, you know, had a lot of money spent on it, obviously it's going to be a higher rent as opposed to something that might be older. But making sure that it's very, very detailed. Our staff, I think averagely, we're looking at around about 120 photos that they take of every property before a tenant moves in. So it's so well recorded, it's so detailed. So they know what they're, because they do not want to have a problem with the tenant at the time, you know, the tenant vacates. Yeah.
Excuse me, are those photos shown to the prospective
Yes.
tenant?
Yeah, no, they go compiled with the entry condition report at the time that the tenant moves into the property. And then, so the tenant then is advised, they've got 3 days to return that to us with their list. You would be amazed how many times tenants come back, hand us back the key and tell us that that hole was there when they started, but you know, we have all these photos and things and there's no hole, you know, yeah. Lawns, obviously for a house, you really want to have that done a day, 2 days before the tenant moves in. You know, you don't really want to have that left too much longer. Using the word advance for when they pay their first 2 weeks. So we refer to it as just paying your first 2 weeks rent to secure the property. That's what you're doing. Every second tenant vacates a property when they give notice. They say, oh, I don't have to pay any more rent. I paid 2 weeks rent in advance when I moved in. So it's an absolute no-no in our office to talk about that term. So if you're using it, it's best not to, not to. And then water charging. So QCAT are saying it's the third highest hearings that they're having. It's all about water charging. So with regards to water charging, like I am all for it. I absolutely believe that, you know, it should be user pay. But you just need to make sure that you've got some steps in place. For instance, you know, have your plumber, have a compliancy certificate, and make sure if your tenant is there long term that you have that updated from time to time. So if you are passing on costs. Now most of the older unit blocks you can't pass on, you'd be passing it on at Carindale, wouldn't you, Tom? Oh, you're not? No. Look, at the Real Estate Institute of Queensland quite recently, the gentleman stood up there and said, you know what, don't bother, just include it in the rent. And I thought, well, the problem with that is they're not going to be concerned. People aren't going to turn off taps. They're not going to have their 3-minute showers, are they? So it's sort of like, you know, you go off to a hotel, you go away, you don't run around turning your lights off because you've kind of got it included in what you've paid. So, but if you know you've got to pay for something, you tend to pay more attention to it. So, yeah, look, I'm certainly not saying don't charge it. I feel you should, and you know, legislation was brought in many years ago to do so. But I'm just saying make sure that you've got good compliancy certificates. Are you passing it on, Adrian? Okay, that's interesting.
Just got a quick query. Most of the cost is actually just a connection fee.
That water access charge. Do you know? Yeah, I know the council charge supplying the water and the sewage. Yeah. But even if your tenancy agreement has it on there and the tenant is advised, look, you will be charged water. If I get an unreasonable amount, I'm going to pass it on. You've made them aware. Yeah, that would at least be the very minimum, I think. Yeah. So
I don't know how it works in like Brisbane City, but where I live in the Redlands, you'll have like a townhouse complex, and each one of the townhouses won't be on a separate water meter.
Yep.
And it'll just be divided, say, between 6.
Yeah.
Do you usually have problems? I'm assuming you'd have problems with that.
It has to be individually metered. So if you've got sub-meters, you still can't pass it on.
Yeah.
That's what, yeah. With some of these new builds, some of our clients have been of the understanding, they thought that they could pass on water costs, but they can't. Sub-meters are not even good enough. It has to be out the front, yeah.
Right, yeah.
And so the minute your invoice says that you're paying a share percentage, it's, yeah.
I don't understand the term sub-meter. What's that?
Oh, look, we just took on another brand new block in Carina Heights, and there's 10 units, and so you go into the property and they've got smaller meters, 10 of them, water meters, that you could read, but the legislation says that you cannot pass on this cost, because we double checked it again when this one came up. To make sure that we were right, because our understanding was that we couldn't pass it on, and yeah, no, we can't. So there's not 10 metres out the front, Norm.
Right.
It's, yeah.
So is that for the body corporate to charge each unit a cost?
Well, I guess, yeah, if they, yeah.
Because otherwise, why would you bother?
Yeah, this particular block is one owner.
Oh.
So it's one owner, so it's not, yeah. But yeah, the point is, unless there is however many metres at the front of the property, yeah, you can't pass it. Yeah, the council access charge is quite high, isn't it? Supplying that water. Okay, insurance. Does anyone here have a unit? No, we're mostly. Yep, there we go. Matt's got a unit. Insurance. I'm not licensed. I'm not a financial insurance agent, so I can't say a lot on this. But I would like to just at least tell you a little story. And this was of a unit. This one happened about 10 years ago at a unit in Coorparoo, where an owner thought that his body corporate insurance would cover him for inside of the property. We had a dear old lady. She was in her 70s, if I remember, and she was pulling down the blind, an old Venetian blind, and the pelmet came down on her shoulder, and she sued that owner $36,000, which of course his body corporate insurance wasn't covering because it was inside the property. So most important thing for renting any property, to be honest, to this day I think, gee, he got off with that lightly. Because if there had been actually a serious incident in that property and someone became paraplegic or something like that, it would have been a whole lot worse. So, yeah. But unfortunately, he had to sell that property to pay that back. Yeah. So, insurance is just it's just a must-have, isn't it? So, 20 million, I think. Legal liability is the requirement. Not only that, your landlord insurance policies are a few $100s a year. It's just crazy not to have it. If your tenant did default, if they upped and left. We actually had a tenant up and go from a Camp Hill property at the beginning of the year, and the loss of rent, it hit $3,200. We've been working the whole year to recover that money from the tenant, and we've got a third of it back so far. And the owner is just, in such dire strait, having to come up with a mortgage, that whole time. It's a shame. So, and your insurance company, they will chase the tenant anyway, but you do get paid immediately, as opposed to, we've got to go through QCAT it's a long process. Yeah. So insurance is just an absolute mush. And then
Can I mention something?
Yes.
That it's probably a good idea to have workers' compensation insurance. Because if you have somebody come on the property do some work, they're not covered by your insurance policy.
Look, that's an area that I wasn't getting into tonight, but with regards to tradespeople, we have to make sure that they've got to have their insurance also.
But it can also be a friend of yours that's helping you. If they get injured, they're not covered.
Yeah, is that right?
So,
Yeah.
And it's only about $200 a year for all your houses.
Yeah, it's just a must-have, isn't it? It's just don't just check it regularly, and throw scenarios at them, to make sure that you're covered. If you've got a house and you've got a building policy, are you covered inside? What happens if a tenant injures themselves? What happens if their friend comes in and so.
I think a visitor's covered, but anybody doing work is not.
Okay.
So
Yep,
just
yeah.
something to be aware of. I wasn't aware of it until
Yeah.
it happened.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Valuing the relationship. So I guess I've introduced this tonight more so because of what's going on in the market. When you think about vacancies, average vacancies in Brisbane, at 33 days. It's over a month. We had a recent situation with a tenant who had advised us that she was looking to move, and the property manager sort of got on the phone to try and establish what was going on and why she would move. And her whole move was all about a blind on a bedroom because she worked shift and there was too much light coming in. So the property manager was obviously successful arranging with that owner to supply the $190 blind. She then didn't have a vacancy. I mean, our vacancies are travelling at 12 days, but there are costs involved for reletting a property. So for the sake of $190, isn't that, So you just need to, valuing your tenant, really paying attention to them in this market, So something that might be annoying them, you might not feel is very urgent, but chances are if they've reported it to you or to your property manager, it needs to be attended to, and I'd suggest promptly. Our property managers have got time frames around getting all their jobs done pretty promptly. So, you could go into situations. Air conditioners are a big one. If an air conditioner stops working, tenants have been able to claim compensation. I'm pretty sure I've read up to like $50 a week that they can, claim until such time as it gets repaired. So, it can turn out to be, a large sum of money. So, and then, making sure you're providing reasonable notice. It's their property. You want them to enjoy it, and most, I know most of the clients here tonight are like that. But you would be amazed how many people are happy to just come onto a property when it suits them. So just being respectful. And then, coming back to establishing the responsibilities, that's for, obviously I was talking about the tenant time that we take through their induction and the tenancy agreement and completing the entry report. Like, it is, everything we do is so detailed. We have to dot every I and cross every T. Like, you just have to cover as much as you can and make the tenants really aware. Because if things happen during their tenancy, if they fall behind with their rent and they get to a period of 8 days, they're going to get a notice from us. Now, that notice will stay on their record, and then the first thing that will happen if they go to rent again, another agent is going to say, oh, have you ever given this tenant a breach? Yes, we have. So we advise tenants of what's in it for them, the reasons why they need to make sure that they, pay their rent on time and look after the property and things like that. Knowing the rules. Does anybody self-manage? Yes. We'll work on that. We had a client yesterday. We've just taken over a new property, and the tenant is 13 weeks behind. So, it's a lot of rent. So he had issued some notices. Timeframes were incorrect. Applied to QCAT. They sent him on his way, sent him packing, told him to go start again. So he came into the office and said, help. So his tenant's having a lovely time. And we've been up to see them, and they seem to feel that their mate, the owner, oh, he'll be right. Yeah, he knows that we are going to go, so we've actually had to start again. So that process, we could be looking at 3 months, because I would say it's going to be a full eviction, which means we'll end up in court. You have to talk about these things. I'm not trying to scare you, but this is the reality. If we went to court, we could end up having to change locks, move the tenant's furniture out, store the tenant's furniture. This is all at the owner's cost. It's a long period. So, if you're thinking, if you have situations come up, you've got to know the exact time frames under legislation. Maintaining the property, obviously, if your tenant's reported, particularly safety aspects, stairs, balconies, unlevel ground is another one. If somebody trips, all those sorts of things, you've just got to maintain your property. And it's worth it. If you're holding on to it long term, it's worth it. Background checks, obviously we have access to all sorts of databases, that we can check tenants and we know what to sort of look for, but we don't have a crystal ball, which is why we come back to recommending to all our owners to have insurance.
Does privacy legislation restrict you a bit in that?
No, because the tenant signs off. They know what information we'll be looking at when they apply for property. And then health and safety laws. There's I've read cases on people, tenants claiming they've become very ill from mould, and so there's health and safety is just really, really, really important.